Okay, then let's go ahead and get started. Once again, I want to say welcome to today's Flexi webinar. We're excited to have you folks with us today. We're going to be having Aaron Clapp take care of the webinar. He will be talking about using the point editing tools in Flexi. And Aaron is our director of training, and he knows everything there is to know about Flexi. So if you do have any questions, we will have a question and answer session after the presentation. So just go ahead and type any questions you have in the chat window there, and we'll try and answer as many of those as we have time for. And we will be recording today's webinar as usual and posting it on our YouTube channel. And we'll send everyone a link to the recording. So if you have to leave or if you'd like to share this with someone, we'll be sending you a link so that you can review this at any time. And got a couple people that aren't hearing, so I'll address those in the chat window. And meanwhile, we'll turn it over to Aaron, talk about point editing.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so a lot of you guys maybe have used some of the point editing tools in Flexi before, but I kind of want to just go over some of these. Some of them we'll kind of brush over them kind of quickly, but there's going to be some more advanced ones that are not as familiar, but we're gonna go over all of them and just kind of use some general examples here. So I set up an image here that I kind of vectorized and made it look bad so that we could work on it. And what I've done is I've actually taken my point editing tools here so I can see them, and they're all front and center. They're also located here on this flyout menu if you want to access them there, but they're all on this menu bar. Nice and neat area. So the first one obviously is the point selector tool. We'll just get started with that one. You can select any object that you've drawn or that you've vectorized, and it'll show you all the points. Now, one thing that I did want to mention real quick was that if you have an object like this and you try to use, it's been drawn in Flexi, and you try and use your point editing tools on it, it won't work. That object has to either be converted to strokes or outlines. So if I convert it to outlines, or I believe then it'll let me edit it. Yes, there we go. If I convert it to outlines, now I can use my point editing tools to start modifying these points. So just be aware that if you use the drawing tools in Flexi, like these, you may have to convert them before you can make any edits. So anyway, thought I'd mention that real quick because that's a common thing that might come up. Anyway, onto this here. So this one is going to be the one that we use to just highlight the points and to move things around and drag and move around our Bezier sliders and things like that. That's going to be our generic selection tool. And then the next two on the right are just simply add or remove points. These are pretty basic. We'll click on the remove points, and we can just start clicking on points to remove them, and it will make different points get removed, and we can simplify our document that way if we have excessive amounts of points that might be interfering with it. Again, the add points tool, pretty self-explanatory. We can add additional points anywhere we need to in case we want to come back and maybe grab that point and make an adjustment in that particular area. So that's the add and remove points. The next three tools, or the next couple sets of tools, 5 or 6 tools, are going to be the ones that I use typically the most. For example, here's the straighten points tool. This is going to be really nice for cleaning up a set of lines or a set of points that you want it just to be straight. So for example, let's go over here to this corner. And if I click on, if I want this line to go straight from here to here and get rid of all this squiggly stuff, I can select any point along here and then select a point down here. And it's going to give me a preview of what that's going to look like. And I can actually drag these around, and this will give me kind of a different look to what this is going to be. And if I'm happy with that, I can either hit the check mark in the Design Central, or I can just hit the Enter key. Honestly, I just like to use the Enter key because it's a lot simpler, a lot faster. Hit Enter, and boom, just like that, it straightens out all those lines for me. And now I've got a nice, crisp, clean edge. And I can do this wherever I like. Gives me really easy, quick access to straightening points however I need to. So that's the straighten points. The next one is round corners. Now this one's a kind of an interesting one. When I click on round corners, this gives me some options in Design Central that I can now play around with. Now when I zoom in, and I'm holding Control and using my scroll wheel for this, I can see these tiny little circles. What this is indicating to me is it's saying that I have all corners selected, and it's going to create a rounded diameter on all corners of 0.007. I can increase that number or decrease it, and it will make those circles go bigger or smaller. Well, let's see, let's try this again. Well, in this case, for some reason, it's giving us a little bit of a hassle. Let's go back here. Select. Now, this happened to me earlier, and I don't know. I think it might be something in my drawing, but anyway, I'm going to leave it at that just for now. You should be able to change this, and these circles will get bigger or smaller based on what adjustment you made. If I hit apply, let's actually just go in and zoom in on one of these guys here. So this circle is basically the preview of the rounded corner that it's going to create. So I hit apply. Well, go figures. Everything will go wrong when you're thinking it should go right, right? Let's try this again. Let's actually try doing this on a different corner. Let's see what it does down here. In that case, it didn't do it. Well, I may have to double check my drawing and find out what's going on here. Let's try, I'm going to modify this corner here and make it a sharp corner real quick and see if that does it. If that doesn't do it, we may just skip over it. But let's do this. Let's turn that into a sharp corner. Like that. Apply sharp corner. And let's come back here. See if this will. Anyway, well, it looks like we are having some kind of issue with the corners tool, and let's try this. We're going to try one more thing. I'm going to draw square here.
He said you may have too many points for it to work properly.
It may be, yeah, it may be too many points. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to convert this to outlines here, and then I'm just going to do this on a much simpler shape and see what I get. So I'm going to wireframe this here. We'll do all corners, and okay, so see now it's working. So that's working, and apply, and it applied a rounded corner. So it could be like you were saying, it's just possible that there's too many corners, or there could be something with this drawing. I was messing around with this drawing quite a bit before, and I might have accidentally done something to the drawing itself that's causing a problem. But that's how that one works in its theory. The next one is sharpen corners. So we kind of showed this one just now as I was troubleshooting that a little bit, but we can take any corner we want and make it sharp. So I'm going to click on 2 points, and I can adjust these points up and down to kind of get a different corner based on the desired effect. And again, I just hit enter, and now I can get a sharp corner. And I can do this on outside corners as well. Again, I can grab these points and just kind of slide them around depending on what I think should work. Hit enter, and then that becomes a sharp corner. So I can make my leaves tips here a little bit pointy if I want them to be. The next couple ones here are going to be related to arcs. So these are 3 different methods of creating an arc. So let's kind of zoom in on a sharp corner here. So this sharp corner looks adequate to me. So I'm going to click on here, and I'm going to click on this corner. And this particular style gives me Bezier handles that I can grab onto. And so now I can modify these based off of these Bezier handles. So that's the unique feature about this particular one. And I can drag these points around, make it a little bit wider if I need to, and move these things. And when I'm ready, hit enter, and then it applies that. So the advantage there is the Bezier handles that it gives you. Let's take a look at the same corner, and let's do optimize by smooth arc. If I click here, and I click on this line and this line here, what it does is it actually optimizes it by the arc that I define. So I can increase or decrease this. If I do that, I may need to slide these little reference points out a little bit, but I can kind of move this in or put in a custom value if I want to, 0.10, whatever I want that to be, and this is the arc that I'm going to get. I can hit enter or hit the apply button, and now I get that arc. The key there is just defining your points. One of the main things that sometimes I forget is that if you have your points too close in here, you get this weird little thing out here. What's happening is that my diameter is too large for this little area, so I need to back these up a little bit. So just be aware that that might be an issue when you're using this particular tool. At any time, if you hit escape, it will just exit out of that tool. So if you need to cancel what you're doing, just hit escape. The third one is the optimize by 3-point arc. This is one of my more favorite ones just because it's pretty simple, and I can create some very easy arcs this way, and it's just a matter of modifying these 3 points, and I can adjust them in and out as much as I want and hit enter. Usually this is one of the tools that I like to use on an outside corner because I can kind of make bigger sweeping moves like this and create bigger arcs a little bit quicker if I don't know what the exact diameter that I want to use is. Again, hit enter, and that just pops right in there like that. This next arc tool up here is a kind of interesting one. It doesn't have any parameters. As you can see, Design Central is actually blank. There's nothing there. What this actually does, in this case, is it just gives you a special cursor and allows you to drag this line into an arc. So if it was a line before, I can just simply go up or down, and it doesn't have a whole lot of adjustment. So you're basically just editing the midpoint of this line and increasing it up or down. So I can do that with any one of these short little segments and kind of bulge these in and out. This can be helpful for if you're doing a lot of custom drawing, you need a quick arc. This is a good way to do that. So a little bit interesting, it's kind of a niche tool, but helpful in certain circumstances if you need to just take a straight line and make a simple line.
Okay, so
Some
Aaron,
of
we got a
these,
quick question here.
yeah.
Houston was just wondering why, if that tool that you're using will snap to other lines or to guidelines.
It can, yep. If you were to set up the guidelines and the snap to ability, I believe that's under the preferences. We can set it up to snap to nearby lines or a grid. That is completely possible. I believe that is under the preferences.
So he says that will snap, but it's not accurate. So that may be something that we need to
That would
test.
probably be something that we
Look at.
need to either test or check because it should be accurate. There shouldn't be a reason why it's not accurate. But we can maybe take a look at that if you want to contact our support. We can definitely do that. Take a look and see what's going on because it should be accurate to the line. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it's not terribly useful.
yeah, and Aaron can work with the development team to make sure
If
we
there is
can
an issue
get
there,
that
yeah,
implemented.
we can definitely address that for sure.
Okay, thanks, Houston.
Um, all right. So another thing that can happen is when you have objects like this. If we were to select this, this file is actually not too bad in terms of how many points it has, but you can get some graphics that are just loaded with points. And this happens a lot when you do vectorization. It tends to add a ton of points. So for example, let me just try and add. I'm just going to add a bunch of meaningless points in here. So I've got a bunch of meaningless points in this line, and if I use this tool here, which is reduce points, it allows me to reduce the amount of points in the file, and then it gives me a tolerance number. So the higher the tolerance, it means the more points it's going to remove, but the more changes it's going to potentially make. So if I up this up to 90%, it may remove a ton of points that I don't want it to remove. But if I keep it low, say at 25%, and hit enter, now it removed all those points without changing the shape of my graphic. It simply just reduced the amount of information, which when you're trying to process a file or add a contour cut to it, or simply even just zoom in and zoom out, having less points available in the file for it to mess up is really nice. So that's just a nice thing to do, especially if you've done it right after I would always recommend it right after a vectorize. Just run a quick reduce points, set the tolerance super low so it doesn't change the graphic, and that'll make it so that you don't have hundreds of thousands of points in a vectorized file, which can happen sometimes. The next tool, we're going to actually kind of go over that here in a second, but because we actually need to use one of these tools, the cleaver or the scissors, in order to use that tool. So first we're going to go over the cleaver. The cleaver is really good for cutting a line in half or an object in half just like that. And it gives you now two pieces that should be separable. Yeah, I had to ungroup it, but now see it gives me two pieces that I could separate. And again, just to kind of go over that again, I clicked on the tool, I left clicked once, I'm holding it, and I'm dragging, and then I let go. And that will create a line, and what it does is they're grouped together, so I'm going to hit Control U to ungroup, and I'm going to click here, and now I've got, it actually automatically connects the two pieces together for me. So this is really helpful if I need to do some manual cutting of a file, or if I need to split up something, it automatically connects those dots. Now, the scissors tool does not necessarily always do that. The scissors tool is a little bit different in that it does not connect those dots. It just simply cuts. So same process. I left click and hold, and then I drag to create a line, and it cuts. Now what has happened here is that now that I select this, it's just separated those two objects. No connecting lines or anything. So two real quick, easy tools to cut a graphic in half. If I need to reseal up these graphics, that's where this close path tool comes in handy. Basically what this does, it grabs all the lines. If they're touching each other, it automatically closes the path for me. Except for it did something weird there. These two should. There we go. I had both of those selected and close the path, and now it's all back to one piece again. So that's how I can combine those two objects, is using the, well, now, what did it do? Did I hit? I think I hit undo. Well, here's what I'm going to do is select both objects. All right, well, different example is what we're going to do. So I'm going to grab this and copy it over here. And I'm going to draw. Oops. Another good example, I guess, for this would be is if you have two lines that need to be connected together, and let's just put it real close. So if you have two objects, like let's say we have this object here, these are an entire line. If I hit close path, it'll automatically join those together within a certain tolerance. So that's probably a better example of it here. I think I'm going to try and get this to work. I think these two would probably benefit a little bit better from this tool over here, which is actually the join path. This is a close path, which sometimes may or may not always work in this specific example. So in this case, what I'm going to try to do is use the join path. Click here, and now they're together. Let's just double check that. Well, now it's giving me nothing but trouble. Right when you want to do something good, right? I think this may have something to do with the trouble that I've had with the other tool. But let's grab. Oh, you know what? I forgot to hit enter. That's what it was. Now see, I'm not even following my own advice. There we go. All right, so now we've joined them together. So that tool did work. So joining paths together. So close paths, I think the best use case scenario for this one is going to be if there's a gap in between the parts. Use the close gap or close path, and then use these for if you have lines that are basically touching each other or they're on the same line and they just need to be joined together. We're going to go into this one here before we move into a different file real quick. So here is the start change point, or change the start point, and this highlights the start point. This would be useful, I guess, if you're doing some cutting and you want the start point to be in a different location. Every object is going to have a start point, and that's where it's going to start cutting. So if you want to change that, I can just simply highlight a different line in the graphic and hit apply, and now that's going to be my new start point. I can even create a new point, and just by clicking any random area, and it'll create a new point, and it'll put a start point right there. So now when this leaf gets cut, instead of starting down here, it's going to start up here at the top. The last couple sets of tools that we want to talk about are all these up here at the top, these last section. These are going to be some more advanced ones that are going to have a little more unique circumstances that you're going to use them for. So I've set up a specific file that will kind of help show off some of these tools. So first of all is going to be the make a right angle. So that's this tool right here. I'm going to select these two pieces, and if I click on make a right angle, it's going to basically select those two objects, and it's going to create right angles out of them. Now, if I do that, if I just highlight one corner and hit right angle, it will automatically make that one a right angle. So I can select which points I want and make a right angle. This one down here, we're going to do the break and join. So this is, again, if I break this path apart by clicking that button right here, I can instantly have separate pieces now. I have to hit apply. Remember to hit apply. Okay, actually, no, there is no apply. I forgot. There's a lot of these tools now. A lot of them work a lot differently. And so sometimes remembering how they work is a little bit tricky. So when we break apart a path, we have to choose the location where we want it to break apart. So we can select a point, like right here, or I can select anywhere along one of these lines and it will break the path at that point. So now when I go back, that one's broken, that one's broken. Now that these are broken apart, we can use that same tool that we used earlier on the other graphic, which is the join paths. Join the paths. In this particular case, this one gives us a tolerance and an apply button. So we'll hit apply, and now these are one piece again. So we can easily join or break apart different paths. This tolerance that it gave us, again, that's a tolerance for a certain length. So if I break that apart and I grab this piece and I move it just far enough away like that, and I try to close path, it's not gonna close that apart because the gap is too great. So that's going to be if you have a graphic that you've imported in, like a DXF file or a drawing that some of the lines are not together. You're going to want to make sure that those lines are connected or close enough to join them. You can always increase your tolerance, but you may run into other issues. If this is the only graphic that we were trying to connect together, then we could just increase this tolerance to like 2 inches or something like that, hit apply, and well, this is kind of what it can do. In this case, what it did is it actually connected this and it connected this. So we would probably not want to go with 2 inches. What's our measurement there? Just do drag. So we're looking at 0.124. So we could increase our tolerance to 0.125 or something like that. And that would probably do that without giving us too much trouble. There we go. That connected these two lines, but didn't connect this one. So you can play around with that if needed. The only thing is that that's just to be aware of, that automatically just draws a straight line between the 2 points. So if you don't want a straight line between the 2 points, you need to follow like a curve or an arc, that may not always be the best scenario to do that with. You may want to just draw a line or add some points and do some other point editing stuff to do that. But that's the break and join path. Align horizontal or vertical. This is another one that is a little bit interesting. It's not as commonly used, but if I want to take all of these points down here at the bottom and I want to align them, I can use the align horizontal, and it's going to automatically align them to the lowest point. And then I can also select these lines and do that here. And it's going to choose the lowest point and align them that way. The align horizontal or vertical tool does exactly the same thing. You can do 1 or 2 points or multiple points. And I could select these 2 vertical points here, and I could align vertically, and it's going to align them up to each other. So that's the align horizontal or vertical tools. And then align points to an angle. So here's kind of an interesting one. Same drawing. I'm going to come in here, select some points. I'm going to grab all these guys on the top, and I'm going to say align points to an angle. And in Design Central, I can then choose the angle that I want them to be aligned to and apply. And now those points are now aligned to that line in that specific angle. There could be a lot of uses for this tool, but this is a pretty simple example, but this is the idea here, is that we're trying to align either vertically to a custom angle or horizontally. And if we look at this one up here, this is a kind of a unique one as well. This one uses a little bit of keystroke. So if I'm going to use this one, I'm going to get ready to use the control key with my clicks. So I'm going to click on this tool here, which is apply length and angle. If I click on this, I can hit control. I'm going to hold down control. I'm going to get this weird little icon that shows up on my cursor now. If I click on that, it's going to give me the information in Design Central about the angle and the length of that line. So I can click on each one and it's going to give me a different angle. So if I want to adjust this angle, I'm going to control click, I'm going to get the information, and I'm going to just make some adjustments. And let's just say, well, what if I want this to be 12? Then if I go back and I just click on that line, it's going to change it to the angle that I need it to be. So if you guys are drawing specific things that need angles, this is a really good way to adjust the angle of something and get that specific angle. If you're drawing parts by hand and you need angles, obviously right angles are really easy to do, but if you need an angle to be at a certain length, a line to be at a certain length or a certain angle, this is one of the best ways to do it. Again, I can click on this line. I can also change the length. So if I want that to be 2.5 inches, click on that line and it'll make it shorter. It'll also make it longer if I change it back, so 6.5. And now that line is at 6.5 inches. And I can do that with any one of these lines by holding control and just clicking on those lines. It gives me that information. You can also turn one of them off if you don't want it to do the information for both, so that you can restrict it that way. There are also some options in here that you can kind of experiment with, but this is half size, 4 times, quarter. Here's some quick and easy ones for just quick hot swapping. The last one that we want to take a look at here is removing tiny objects. This is really helpful when doing a vectorize. What I actually did here is I just took a vectorize of a piece of paper, notebook paper, and it gave me all these tiny little artifacts, tiny little squares and stuff that I probably don't really want. And if I were to go through here and delete them one by one, I could do that, but that's tedious and annoying. So I'm going to highlight this whole thing. I'm going to go to my last tool here in the list. It says remove tiny objects. And I've set this pre ahead of time at 0.197 inches. So anything smaller than 0.197 inches is going to get removed. When I hit apply, you can see that it's already removed all that tiny little stuff in there. Now I could keep going with this if I wanted to. If I wanted to get rid of these circles, maybe I might go 0.25. That's probably not quite big enough. I didn't really measure these circles, so I don't know what their threshold is here. So there, it removed a bunch of those. So you can kind of, depending on how nasty or bad your vectorize came out, especially if you're trying to vectorize something like this happens a lot, vectorizing a business card. Sometimes when you scan in a business card, like on a scanner, and then you pull that image into Flexi, the scanner tends to want to pick up all those little tiny little pieces of fibers and stuff like that. And when you go to vectorize, the vectorizing tool can actually sometimes pick those up and vectorize those. And so this is a way to really easily remove a bunch of junk that you don't want in your graphic if you've just done a vectorization. So that's kind of a quick, windy, super fast overview of all the tools. I have actually gotten a link for you guys. If you go to your cloud window over here on the right-hand side, if you have a subscription, or even if you don't, if you have a permanent version, there should be this option that says Knowledgebase. Let me see if I can pull that up here and show you guys what I was looking at. This is a really helpful. So here we've got our knowledge base, and I just did a search for point editing tools, and I'm going to go into editing paths, And here is an entire list of all the different tools and what they do. So if you ever forget, like me, because honestly, that's a lot of stuff to remember and how each one, every one of them works. I'm pretty familiar with the way most of my favorites work, but some of these other ones, like sometimes I can forget. You just click on one of them. So for example, let's just do sharpening corners. It kind of gives you a brief overview of how to use it. And then usually down below, it'll kind of give you an example of what that might look like. Um, so each and every one of these has a nice explanation on how to use them. So take advantage of that resource. It's really helpful. And uh, if you ever have any questions about how those work, give us a call or check out that knowledge base. It'll tell you how to use those. In fact, this is not just for this is a plug not just for the knowledge base just for these point editing tools, but anytime you have a question about how a tool works, that knowledge base is basically the user help menu that used to be in a very disorganized and hard to use form factor and is now easily searchable, and you can search about just about anything. You can search color correction topics and all kinds of stuff, and a lot of times we might even have a video on how to use it. So some of the topics like setting up contour cuts and printing and other topics will have 1, 2, or 3 videos even associated with them, along with um, the written out explanation of how to use that particular tool. So it's a useful tool. I use it all the time if I'm a little rusty on something and I just don't understand maybe the way something works, or if I have forgotten something, I'll just go back in there and I'll look it up and I'll say, oh yeah, okay, that's right. This tool works this way. And then I'll move on with my day. That way you can save yourself a little time sometimes. If you have a quick question, check there first, and you'll probably be surprised at how much good information is in there. So at this point, I probably think we can turn it over for questions. I know it took up a lot of time, and that's a lot of information to kind of cover real quick, but what questions do we have?
Yeah, just go ahead and type them into the chat window on the bottom right there. Whether they're about point editing tools or anything else about Flexi, Aaron's the man to ask. All right, Bennett says thank you. Yeah, thanks for covering all that, Aaron. That is a lot of information, but a lot of really useful tools as well.
I find that a lot of times if you do a lot of vectorizing, this is the kind of stuff you want to be really familiar with, because let's just be real, a lot of times we get really messed up graphics and they're blurry or something like that. You're always probably going to have to correct a vectorized graphic. A vectorized graphic doesn't always come out perfect, and so this is going to be one of the best ways to kind of get in there and kind of modify stuff if you need to.
Yeah. Let's see here. Jessica said that she's having issues with contour cuts on printed graphics. The cut line is sporadic in places. It's not an issue with the machine.
Okay. We'd probably want to have our tech support take a look at that, but if it's does the couple things that we want to maybe take a look at is when you apply the contour cut, is the contour cut on screen look sporadic, or or is it or does the contour cut look good and then cut sporadically? There's several different things we could probably take a look at there. We'd want to look at some files and maybe compare some output and just kind of take a look at that. One of the things that you can also do that tech support could kind of help you with is exporting a PLT file and then using a program like Flexi or some other program to examine the output and just see if it's jagged or if it's breaking up or something happening like that.
Okay. And let me just type in do you want to type the eSupport address up on your screen there, Aaron? Just so
Yeah,
everyone
I can
has it in
type
case they do
in.
have any technical issues.
If you want to email us, you can always email us at esupport@thinksai.com, or our phone number is 800-229-9044. This
Excellent.
number will get you right to tech support, so that won't go through our switchboard or anything. You'll be greeted by a receptionist, and she'll get you, make sure she gets you to the right place.
Excellent. Thanks, Aaron. So we have a question from Houston said, is there a quick way to get the perimeter of a specific shape, kind of like the apply length button? I take the shape to a new file and check the job statistics.
That is one way, for sure. I know you could probably use some of these tools. I don't know that there's a specific tool to uh, uh, find the area or the perimeter of a specific object. I don't think that there is. Let's just see here. If I click on this, yeah, see, it gives me. Yeah, I don't think that there is, unfortunately, for the area. That's actually a good question, though. It's something that I'd be interested in finding out, though, if we could do, and maybe perhaps expand on it.
Yeah, Houston said that
Yeah, I
the
think
apply
that
length menu or the apply length button you went over was cool for a segment.
yes, it works good for a segment, but it doesn't really give us any information for about an area. That's a good question. I would have to probably maybe see if we could uh, get something for that. 'Cause, yeah, the area is one of those things that might be a good thing to know, but the only place I know of where to access that would be under your statistics, and that would be the only way to do it would be to go into a blank file, because the job statistics is based off the entire job or the entire file.
Okay. And Jim, I saw your question there. You said just got in from a job. Can I find the webinar online? Yes, we are recording this webinar and we'll post it to our YouTube channel. And as soon as that is up, we will send everyone a link to the recording so you can watch it or review it whenever you like. And Lisa, the number for tech support is on the screen there. Aaron, could you make that a little bigger? But it is
Oh, yes.
800-229-9044. And I think that's about all the time we have for questions today. So once again, we do just want to say thank you to everyone for attending the webinar today. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend it with us to kind of go over learning a little bit more about Flexi and how you can use the tools more efficiently. And so we'll send everyone that link to the recording as soon as we get that uploaded. And we will have another Flexi webinar next month in November. Let's see here. It's going to be on November 5th. And on that one, we're going to be going over vectorizing. So really important stuff there. Feel free to tune in. We'll send you another email invite, and we will see you next month.
All right, sounds good.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you, Aaron.